annoying sound in the world? Guys!
Think we could listen to the radio, listen.
Buck, you do this? What are you doing?
Don't you love it?
What is that?
It's Medical Monday.
Medical Monday, what's that?
Yeah, it's Slum National Underground Thunder bounce when I stomp the ground. Like a million elephants, a silverback orangutan. You can't stop a train. Who wants some? Don't come unprepared. I'll be there, but when I leave there, better be a household name.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Medical Monday. So this week we're going to talk about the CPR report cards. We used to get these in the past, and we're starting them back up. And so I'm going to spend a couple minutes just going through them so you'll know what you're looking at. They're a little different than what we're used to. Alright, so let's get started. First thing you're going to see on this thing is a bunch of times, CPR times, power on time, all that. All these times. They don't really matter. They're not very pertinent. So whatever, there they are. You got a legend here, which should be pretty self-explanatory. It kind of tells you what your colors down in the graphs represent. So there they are. You have a CPR event summary. Period of time you were in CPR. The little green sort of dashes there are pauses. The purple is ROSC. And then in this case the patient rearrested and then they got ROSC again. So there's another CPR period and then ROSC. When we scroll down, our depth target. So remember your target depth is 2 to 2.4 inches. This gives you a sort of a representation of that as a blue line across the graph. That's your target. And then each one of these sort of gray and sometimes blue lines are individual compressions, and this sort of shows you where they hit as far as your depth goes. In this case, only 27% in our target depth. It's a narrow range. 2 to 2.4 is a narrow range, so it's hard to do. You have a feedback device on the monitor that'll tell you that, and so we'll try to hopefully improve these numbers. Rate, pretty much the same thing. It gives you a blue line that represents your target. All these little dots are individual compressions and sort of where they fell. And so for the most part, 80% in the target range in this period, or in this CPR case. We got a ROSC here, and then we had a few more, a little more sporadic when the patient rearrested, and then we went back into another ROSC. Compressions in target are the number of compressions for the entire case that hit both depth and rate and release target ranges. So 19% of the compressions in this case were in target. It's hard to hit every one of these metrics, so it is what it is. Release velocity, so this is a new term and we've sort of had to try to figure out what it is. Essentially for you, all it means is adequate release. If you have a release velocity above 400, that marks adequate release. Anything below 400 means you weren't coming off the chest enough, so that's pretty much all you need to know about it. You have your target range again in blue, and then where all your compressions fell. Your end-tidal CO2 trend. So this is not that great of a visualization, but whatever, it is what it is. So it gives you sort of a bar graph, and each time it records an end-tidal CO2, it adds a dot. I think it does it every minute, and it pretty much puts a dot in whatever your level was. So it's not going to show you any waveforms. So in this case, you know, they had end-tidals around 60 and then 30. And then what's interesting is you can sort of see it on here is that we saw the end-tidal shoot up, and then that was right around the same time they got ROSC. So again, good indicator of ROSC. Then we see it sort of taper down, and at some point the patient rearrested, and so they identified that, started CPR again, and then got another jump, and so they got another ROSC. The purple bars represent ventilations per minute. It really does you no good seeing it on here because it doesn't tell you how many. So I guess if you're up around 30 or something, you could sort of tell how many. Obviously we're not going to be that high per minute, so there it is. Alright, as we scroll down, some really good information on the second page. Chest compression fraction, that's your percentage of time on chest. Nice little pie graph there for that. Then it sort of marks out your CPR pauses over here, which is really cool. So it tells you of all your pauses, what percentage were under 5 seconds, what percentage were 5 to 10 seconds, and what percentage were over 10. So obviously we want all of ours to be under 10. Optimal would be under 5, and then over 10 would be what we want to avoid. In this case, the majority were under 5 seconds, so that's good, and they got a raw, so it makes sense. And then a few were 5 to 10, and it looks like they only had one pause over 10 seconds. It also tells you in your depth how deep or shallow, or where you kind of fell short of your target, or if you were in target. Obviously on this side would be too shallow, small percentage. There was a 25% or so were in target, and then the majority were too deep. As far as rate, sort of the same layout. 13% were too slow. Then we had 79%, a good majority, were in target, and then 7% were too fast. And down here it sort of gives you a breakdown of all of your longest pauses. And so we said there's probably one in this case that was over 10 seconds, and sure enough, there's one that was 11.7 seconds, and then a couple others. There were no shocks. If there are shocks, it tells you how many shocks you gave, and then your pauses associated with each shock in this area. So that's another good piece of information. That's pretty much all it has on here. So pretty good, pretty valuable information. Please use it and sort of to just improve your CPR numbers. That's all I got. Have a great week, and we will see you next time. Let us know if you have any questions. Bye.
Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your fill.